Well, folks, it looks like we've got some balance changes coming to Hearthstone, presumably in the near future. We don't have a date or timeline, but confirmed on Twitter here from Celestalon that balance changes are coming, and specifically in reference to some of the decks seen in the World Championship, which I've got here behind me. So Garrote Rogue, OTK Demon Hunter, Owl Warlock, Quest Warrior, Alignment Druid. Sounds like most of those decks are going to be getting hit. So I wanted to break down what we might see, the changes I think Blizzard might make based on this, and some of the other data I looked at. Cards that have kind of absurd mulligan win rates or drawn win rates or seem to be fueling decks that are problematic from a community standpoint. Not necessarily recommending all of these nerfs, just talking through what I think possibilities might be for how Blizzard approaches these balance changes. That said, let's kick it off here with our buddy, the Iron Deep Trog. This is like the third most popular card in Hearthstone right now, and clearly snowballs out of control for any deck that can buff it to increase its survivability, thereby making it really hard for any spell-based deck to remove it, and then it just like completely shuts down their game plan, which can be really frustrating to play against. So here I said, yeah, maybe let's push it to 2. I think there are actually more elegant changes for Trog, maybe making it summon a base copy of the Trog instead of like a buffed copy. That's something we've seen for cards like this in the past. Now, that said, Blizzard usually changes things based on mana cost, so for simplicity's sake and maybe likelihood's sake, I just said, let's see what it looks like pushed to 2. Now, I'm going to say something that's probably not going to be super popular. I actually really like Trog. I think Trog's good for Hearthstone in a weird way. We've had so many metas and decks that are fueled by just endless spell spams and incredibly efficient removal tools. I think Trog actually encourages minion combat on board. Like, you want to have minions down to trade into the Trog. It also actually encourages hard removal as opposed to like really cheap damage-based like spammy spells. So in other words, instead of Mage running a Brain Freeze, like Brain Freeze is not good against a 4/4 Trog with Divine Shield, but a hard removal card is still good against a 4/4 Trog with Divine Shield. So, the Coerces or Assassinates of the world suddenly become a much better tool to answer this sort of thing, which I think pushes the game towards kind of a slower state as well, as opposed to this just like cycle like crazy state that we see right now. So I think along both those angles, that's a Hearthstone I might like a little bit more minion focused, and more kind of resource driven or mid to late game driven as opposed to like really fast cards. So I would maybe leave Trog as is. Like, he's very powerful, and I don't like that he can sometimes lock out games. So what do you guys think? Is Trog good for the game, bad for the game, just too strong, too frustrating? I think he's certainly a reasonable nerf given his crazy mulligan win rates and popularity. It's not absurd at all to suggest this card should be nerfed. It's just, it's one I kind of like and wish worked without being problematic. So yes, maybe from a power level standpoint, this is pushed a little too far, but philosophically, man, I sure want to keep Trog around. So next up here, let's take a look at Quest Warrior. I think most people are getting kind of tired of playing against an endless onslaught of pirates, and Quest Warrior seems to be everywhere. It's funny, it's a deck we kind of wanted to be good initially, and it wasn't all that great, and then they got buffs, and then they also got additional pirates in Dead Mines, like here the Defias Cannoneer, which has certainly made Quest Warrior really, really strong. And Cannoneer, to me, seems like a great target for a nerf. It's got this effect that could remain intact while pulling the stats down to 2/2 to make it a little bit easier to deal with on board and less threatening in and of itself. So you still retain the identity of the card. In fact, you maybe add a little bit of feel here, making him a 2/2 to line up with that 2 damage. So, this would be just one small hit to Warrior that I think would retain some of the power level. But to me, this feels like one of the more frustrating cards that once it gets out ahead, it's kind of hard to pull back from sometimes because it could just pump out like 7 damage per turn. And pulling this down would definitely help. Maybe 1 or 2 other small changes might pull Quest Warrior into a healthier spot, but there's quite a few good targets that could work just fine. In fact, reverting some of the buffs that we got previously might be enough to put Quest Warrior back into a slightly healthier spot. Moving on here to Dreadlich Tamsin. This is the most played hero card so far from Alterac Valley, and that's because 2 major decks are running it. Owl Warlock and Quest Handlock stuff is also able to use Tamsin. It's funny, Tamsin was one of those cards in the reviews where I said, like, this is going to be really good. 4-star card. It's actually been 5 stars so far. But, I said, I don't know if it's going to get played right away because I don't think Quest Warlock's going to run it. Turns out Tamsin's so freaking good, even Quest Warlock runs it, despite the hero power reducing your damage output a little bit. post quest reward because it's just so insane, right? It just does so much. Drawing 3 cards is insane. A little bit of life gain, board clear. It's just an incredible tool to play. It packs so much punch for only 6 mana. So I think pushing it back to 7 would be nice. It would pull it in line with some of the other hero cards, which seem notably weaker, particularly like Dawngrasp at 8 mana. It's like, man, that's a tough comparison. But even like Rokara and others aren't doing nearly as well despite costing more mana. So yeah, just pushing it up a little bit, slowing it down some would reduce its efficiency and make it, you know, more of a late game tool than kind of a pseudo mid game tool. And that like 3 damage AoE gets a lot worse later in the game the farther it goes. So maybe this would make it harder to run in Quest Warlock. Might still be good in Owl, but just a little too good right now. It stands out above the rest too far. So next up here is the Moarg Artificer. This is a card that's also very popular in Owl Warlock alongside Tamsin, and in fact, I think just too strong. The fact that it's doubling all of your removal in that deck is completely absurd. It makes it way too easy to clear just like gigantic boards, which of course gives that deck all of the control tools it needs to get to its Owl win condition. So I'm not going to include anything else for Owl Warlock in this video, like not Phylactery, not Owl itself. I actually think that combo is okay if that deck has a little bit more risk. But the deck right now has no risk because it can live against anything because it has like insane endless healing and removal thanks to cards like Moarg, which are doubling your removal damage and often doubling your healing with things like Drain Soul as well. And if you take out the like really core fuel for that deck, it's not going to be able to get to its combo as reliably. That's going to lower the power level of Owl Warlock. But, you know, by tackling a card that also can be problematic in things like Lifesteal Demon Hunter, a deck they already tried to kill once with Il'gynoth, but as we saw from that World Championship deck list, still incredibly popular and strong at the highest power levels of Hearthstone. And hitting Moarg pretty hard would take care of both of those problems. I think it's time for Moarg to suffer. So I would recommend 4. I don't know if 3 is enough. I haven't really done the breakpoints on OTK Demon Hunter. Maybe 3 is fine. But this is just such a strong effect that 4, it might even still get played in some decks, although I don't really want it to. At 3, I think it definitely would still get played and be too strong. So what would you guys do for Moarg here? Is 4 pushing it too far, or is that actually a good change? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So next up here is the Octobot. Cost reductions in Hearthstone, man, they are frustrating to play against. We already saw Ruined Mithril Rod get nerfed, and it's still really good in Owl Warlock, by the way, despite being nerfed previously. But in Rogue, with Garrote Rogue, which is, you know, in the World Championship there, and most of those decks are getting changed, I think Octobot's got to be the key target for Garrote Rogue. It just makes that deck incredibly efficient at playing a ton of cards and spamming you with stuff. And if Blizzard wants to go combo decks and let the control meta shine like they've teased, we just took care of Owl and OTK Warlock. This takes care of Garrote Rogue. That pulls the combo meta down, allows a more control meta to thrive. So Octobot to 3 seems like a completely reasonable change. There might be other things you could do, like limit the number of reductions or something. Maybe give it less health, but that wouldn't really change much because most of the time the rogues are activating it themselves. So I think a mana cost change is the most likely outlet for Blizzard here. And then this one might surprise some people. Stonehearth Vindicator for Paladin. I think this could be nerfed. There were 2 prime targets looking at the data for Libram Paladin or Buff Paladins. Both of them were the 3 mana draw card cards. Alliance Bannerman and Stonehearth Vindicator both have ridiculously good stats in the early game. You play either of these cards early, you're doing very, very well. They both have high mulligan win rates, played win rates, and drawn win rates. They're just really, really strong tools because of how efficient they are. This one's like really good at stabilizing a board or kind of creating some follow-up with its buffs that it draws. And then Bannerman, of course, just stacks your hand with a ridiculous number of stats. But card draw with strong upside is the theme for both of these. And actually, Vindicator had slightly better stats than Bannerman, which surprised me. My instincts would have told me Bannerman would have been the standout card. I've talked about Bannerman a ton, how it's just an insanely good card. But Vindicator currently has better stats, higher drawn win rates and mulligan win rates. So maybe it'll be the target for Blizzard. It's also a new card, so sometimes it feels better to nerf the new stuff as opposed to the older stuff. It's a toss-up. I think you could pick either one, and that would pull down Paladin in a healthy way, because right now it's really good across a couple different versions of Paladin. They have very high win rates, particularly at lower ranks. So I think 1 or 2 or something else in Paladin will get changed. Maybe a Libram card, maybe like one of the buffs itself. Like Hand of Doll already got nerfed, so I don't know if that's going to be a great target. But something along the lines of the early to mid game Paladin stuff to me seems like a target. Stonehearth Vindicator stood out to me based on the data. So we'll see. So before I go, I also wanted to propose some potential buffs. I hate just nerfing cards all the time. I'd like to see some things buffed, because I don't think like nerfing Tanzin, for instance, is going to be good enough to like make Big Spell Mage shine in the meta. I think it needs a hand. So, I picked some archetypes I'd like to see get some help. Here's Belinda Stonehearth. What if we gave her Taunt and made her a 4/4? And you might say, wait a minute, a 4/4? That's not a buff for you. That's a nerf. But of course it's a buff, because she doesn't really keep her stats. She's swapping them with spells. That means the spells you're swapping actually get cheaper, so you get like 4 mana big spells instead of 5. That means if you played this on 10, of course, you could immediately follow it up with a big spell, which is cool if you have to play this in the late game. Right now, it's kind of awkward to do. But also, if you just play this on curve, you have more room to work with on your following turn. You can do other stuff alongside it. Plus, give her Taunt so that her stats actually matter. As it stands right now, she's so slow and her stats don't matter. Your opponent just kind of ignores it and kills you if they're aggro, or it just takes too long to like trade into small stuff. So give her Taunt, maybe even Rush. I thought Rush seemed a little too good. Maybe Taunt is kind of a nice middle ground, so that the stats are relevant when she swaps into big stuff, and then also change her base stats so that the big stuff gets cheaper. That would help a card like Belinda Stonehearth to get there, because right now she is incredibly awkward and very hard to play. I also wanted to take a look here at Seraphine Fleet Runner. Let's make her a 3-mana 3/3. Rogues love 3-mana 3/3s, and that gets her effect down way earlier in the game. Right now, the problem is you got this big card just kind of chilling in hand. By the time you get to turn 5, it's a little bit harder to make a big influence based on cost discounts, because like your opponent's already really enacting their game plan. They're moving towards their win condition. If they're aggro, they've already swarmed you. If they're combo, they're just getting really far along in their game plan. So giving you the discounts earlier in the game lets you start to influence that sooner and play all that stuff faster, assuming it's the right sort of cost, because it is all random, and hopefully allows a card like this to make a more influential impact faster and soon enough to actually be relevant and matter. If you look at Seraphine's stats, she actually is in a decent deck. You might think, oh man, I've seen a rogue deck running her, it's not that bad, but she has far and away the worst stats inside of that list. Like, it's a good Burgle rogue list because of all the like Burgle tempo stuff, but the base Seraphine has like a 36% win rate in a deck with like a 53% win rate. So her like played and drawn win rates are miserable at 5 mana. She's just too hard to play that first time. You spend too much, you don't get it down fast enough. So this could fix a lot of those problems. And then next up, Buddy Brasswing here. And really, this was kind of a thought about honorable kill. So I included a couple honorable kill cards here, because honorable kill is a keyword it's currently not quite succeeding to a great extent. There's a few good honorable kill cards, Siphon Mana and Frostbite for Shaman stand out. There's the Hunter Weapon's pretty solid too, but a lot of them aren't doing enough. So I wanted to take a look at the epic honorable kill cards in particular, because it kind of sucks to get an epic card and then it just be really awful. So for Brasswing, what have we made it? 7 mana, and it dealt 3 damage instead. I made it a 7 attack just for flavor's sake, right? That's 3 and 4 as well as 7. So all 7s here on Brasswing. Make him a little bit faster, increase that damage output so that he might just be good at clearing boards, even if they're not honorably killed. But also, I think 3 is a more favorable breakpoint for honorable kill, especially by the time you get to turn 7. Would this make Brasswing good? I still think he might be too slow, but it certainly helps. It makes him more impactful. It could be a board clear. It's sometimes easier to squeeze in something like an Equality alongside him now at 3 mana, which isn't great for honorable kill, but could still be kind of a 2-card board clear for a big or control paladin deck. So I think this would help Brasswing. And then also Lobotomizer. Screw the get a copy. Let's take the card. Steal it. Steal the top card of your opponent's deck. In other words, Lobotomizer right now is just like this value generator. What if you made it a value generator that also disrupted your opponent and had a chance to do things like steal combo pieces? I think that would not be that crazy powerful. Rogue already has a lot of these that can steal combo pieces. Adding an additional one's not a problem, because your opponent, they know if you have the risk of a Lobotomizer, they have to be very careful around their health totals on board, which kind of creates this nice back and forth and introduces some controlled risk, essentially, where they might risk losing a thing, but they can kind of influence that and control it, which I think would be a rewarding play pattern for a card like Lobotomizer. And of course, really amp up the power level to make it competitive, whereas right now this card is not getting played. So yeah, there you go. That's my take on potential buffs and the potential nerfs as well. These buffs are definitely ones I'd like to see. The nerfs, some of those I think were great ideas. Others, probably just what Blizzard's likely to do. But I'm curious to hear everybody's thoughts below. The one deck I didn't touch, which was featured heavily in that World Championship teaser, was Alignment Druid. I don't know. They said Celestion said most of the decks, so I was like, well, I'll leave out Alignment Druid as one of the prominent ones. I don't think that's crazy popular on ladder. At high ranks, it's played more, but I just had to pick one to leave out. So Alignment Druid, do you think that's going to get changed? How would it be changed? Share those thoughts below, along with all your other takes on these cards and more. Look forward to reading that. Thank you much, as always, for watching, and until next time, game on.